They say in this business, timing is everything. But in 1995, Sega of America decided that timing was a weapon. They thought they were holding a dagger to Sony's throat. In reality, they were just tightening the noose around their own. This is the story of the Sega Saturn launch, a masterclass in corporate sabotage where the victim and the perpetrator shared the same office. For more weekly controversial moments in gaming history, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Los Angeles, May 1995. The very first Electronic Entertainment Expo. The industry was moving away from the standard paper world of 2D sprites and into a cold, hard industrial reality of 3D polygons. Sega was the king of the mountain. But the mountain, well, it was crumbling. Their 16-bit empire was aging, and the next gen was no longer a mystery. It was a war. On one side, the veteran Sega. On the other, the newcomer, Sony. Sony had no history, no mascot, and no legacy. All they had was a gray box and a chip on their shoulder. Sega's president, Tom Kalinske, took the stage. He knew the Sony PlayStation was coming in September. He knew it looked sleeker. He knew it was powerful, so he decided to play dirty. The Saturn is coming, he told the crowd. But it isn't coming in September. It's available now. The room went cold. For $399, you could walk into a store and buy a Saturn that very afternoon. It was supposed to be a shock and awe campaign. A way to lock out Sony before they could even lace up their boots. But Sega forgot one thing. You can't start a revolution if you don't tell the people holding the guns. Sega had only shipped units to 4 chosen retailers: Toys R Us, Babbage's, Software Etc., and EB Games. Everyone else? They were left in the dark. Imagine being a buyer for KB Toys or Walmart. You spent months preparing for a September launch, and suddenly, your competitors have the stock, and you have nothing. The retaliation was swift. KB Toys didn't just complain, they purged. They ripped Sega products off the shelves entirely. They turned the Sega section of the stores into a graveyard of empty steel. But Gru Deathblow didn't come from a retailer. It came from a single sentence. After Kalinske's surprise announcement, Sony's Steve Race walked up to the podium. He didn't have a presentation. He didn't have a speech. He looked at the audience of faceless suits, leaned into the microphone, and said 3 syllables. $299. And he just sat down. The press was silent. In 2 seconds, Sony had turned the Saturn's surprise into an overpriced mistake. Saturn was $100 more expensive, had almost no games ready for their early launch, and had just declared war on the very shops they needed to survive. The aftermath was a slow-motion car crash. Third-party developers were blindsided. Their games weren't ready for a May launch. The industrial power of the Saturn, a complex dual-processing beast, was too hard to program on such a short notice. The mystery of what the Saturn could do was replaced by the reality of what it couldn't: compete. By the time September rolled around, the original launch date, Sony arrived with a cheaper console, more games, and a better relationship with every store in the country. Sega had sabotaged their own runway. They spent the rest of the generation trying to polish a surface that had already been scratched to the bone. The Sega Saturn wasn't killed by Sony. It was killed by a $100 price tag and a surprise that no one wanted to be part of. Following that catastrophic launch, the Sega Saturn never truly recovered its footing in North America, ultimately being discontinued in 1998 with only 9.26 million units sold worldwide, a fraction of the PlayStation's 102 million. Financial hemorrhage caused by the Sega Saturn forced Sega to rush the development of their final console, the Dreamcast, which launched in 1999 to critical acclaim but faced an insurmountable trust gap with retailers and consumers. By March 2001, the weight of consecutive hardware failures and mounting debt pushed the former industry giant to make the ultimate corporate pivot. Sega officially exited the hardware business, transforming into a third-party software publisher and effectively ending the console wars of the 20th century.